record. So, welcome everybody to Tool Time Tuesday. I'm Andrea Young, ECAC Communications Lead, and I am joined by Steve Strom and Carrie McCarthy Adams today. They are with the North Carolina Fragile X Foundation. They'll be talking about Fragile X and the foundation's mission to improve the quality of life for those impacted by it. So, this is very important information, and I want to give them all the time that they can. So, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to them.
Thank you, Andrea. Hey, is this Tool Time? Is that a nod to the Home Improvement sitcom from the 90s?
I'm guessing way back when that's probably where it came from. It was before I was here, so.
Love it. Love it. Welcome, everyone. My name is Steve Strom. I am a parent of a 28-year-old son who has Fragile X syndrome. And Carrie, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Carrie McCarthy Adams, and I am the parent of two boys, one who is a carrier of Fragile X syndrome, and one has the full mutation. He's 18.
Excellent. We're going to share some information with you today, and let me see if I can pull this up on the screen and go ahead and start our slideshow from slide number one. And here we go. Okay, so as parents, we're going to be sharing some information with you. We're both professionals in the field as well. And our agenda today will be an overview of the Fragile X syndrome and some early genetic diagnoses and some information that'll be very helpful. We'll share a little bit about our own personal story. We'll tell you a little bit about navigating services and supports in North Carolina and provide some tools for you and have some opportunity to share some questions and answers. Feel free to use the chat if you'd like to throw in some questions along the way. This will be a high level and we'll provide some resources for you. So I've asked our folks to keep me on track so I don't go too far in depth for what we're going to share about Fragile X today. But we want you to have some information. So if you run across a family that is impacted by Fragile X syndrome, you'll have some general information about the disability or the diagnosis and some opportunity to share resources. So, what is Fragile X syndrome? When we are just meeting someone on the street, this is kind of our elevator pitch. It's the most inherited form of intellectual disability, especially among boys. It's still considered a rare disorder because rare diseases or rare disorders, they're defined as having less than 200,000 individuals in the United States. There's a difference between someone who's fully affected and someone who has a permutation. And I'm just going to leave it at that. But many of our folks who are affected by Fragile X syndrome also have a dual diagnosis of autism. And oftentimes we will share that you will find that that is probably the most prevalent secondary diagnosis with autism is Fragile X. Uh, when our facial features and other features that you see in other disabilities is not as prevalent. And most often, families will notice speech delays or social delays and begin to talk to the pediatrician. But other things that you'll see over time is a lot of sensory sensitivities, anxiety, and repetitive behaviors. Carrie, anything you want to mention here on this slide?
Just that to me, that makes a lot more sense when you think about one of the causes. It is a genetic condition and it affects the X chromosome. So that connection is with the turning off of a protein, and it's that protein that, in a very broad way, affects their ability to adjust to their environment. So if you do find that there's a child who's extra sensitive to their environment and showing other delays, that would be a good time to talk with your child's doctor.
And just to give you some numbers in general, when we talk about those who are fully affected by Fragile X, there are about 32, 3,300, based on just the general numbers that we're looking at from a population perspective in the state of North Carolina, and about 49,000 who have the permutation or premutation. So there's again differences in that, and that can be diagnosed through some genetic testing. And you touched on this just a moment ago, Carrie, around just genetic. Do you want to talk about the importance of early diagnosis?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was lucky enough to participate as a consultant on a recent, well, 5 years ago, as a group at RTI International. We're looking at different diagnoses that would benefit from being on the screening panel for when children are born. Fragile X is not currently on that panel. However, we're able to show that by knowing at birth or soon after birth that a child has Fragile X, that you would be connected with resources and early intervention services right away. By comparison, I was just at an event in Cincinnati for a Fragile X conference recently, and it breaks my heart when I find out that there's a child who's 5 years old and the family has just gotten a diagnosis. So they've missed out on so many important, it really has shown to benefit all children to have those extra supports for them and for the family. So yes, early diagnosis is a simple a blood test. It just needs to be made usually through your pediatrician as a referral.
Thank you. And because you're having that diagnosis early, as Carrie mentioned, it really opens up, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, access to additional services
Mhm.
that are available. But if we take a look at what I mentioned in one of my introductory slides, is that it's the most common and inherited cause of intellectual disability and autism, and it's on the X chromosome. And that's important for bullet point number two, that it's often under-recognized, especially in girls, because as you know, your biology from your freshman or sophomore year in high school, we have two X chromosomes for girls, and we have an X and a Y. So it's often one X chromosome is affected. So having two X's gives you a little bit of a backup. Unfortunately, for boys, that's not the case. So if you have the full permutation of Fragile X, then you'll have most definitely these kinds of things. The delays, both in speech, your milestone delays, a lot of anxiety and sensory issues. Now, if you know early, and Carrie, I'm going to ask you to
Yeah.
maybe touch on some of the early ones, and I'll talk about
Mhm.
some of the others
Sure.
here. Mhm.
Sure. Well, I am a believer in early intervention. After my son was diagnosed in North Carolina, I soon learned what developmental therapy was and then became a developmental therapist for the last 14 years. So I've seen the impact of having those supports in your home within the family. And that's the part that I love about early intervention. It is family centered. Once a child turns 3, if they meet criteria, then they have access to exceptional children or preschool services, depending on your county. It's called different things, but those are under the public school, and those are very much classroom based. But the main thing is the earlier you get those services, the more home based they are. And we know that the multitude of characteristics that come with Fragile X do affect the family. And if they can learn early how to adopt and support their child and learn how to work with these, it can really make a huge difference in how the family functions and builds up their resilience to help support their child.
By the time they get to school, obviously, with those early intervention programs, my son was involved early on in the preschool and absolutely loved full day. At 3 years old, he was going to school full day at Nightdale Elementary in the preschool program. and benefited so much. He loves learning. He loved all of the routine that came from that. And so we were able to launch directly into a full school program. And my son was in a segregated class. For the most part, and had some opportunity to participate with the regular population uh, or non-disabled population at schools, but his IEP really addressed the specific needs there. Because we got an early diagnosis, we were able to also connect to our local management entity, MCO, here in Wake County. It's Alliance. And that opened up the opportunity to get on that famous wait list.
Mhm.
And at 10 years old in 2006, Adam got the innovations waiver. I think it was called something different there. Last year, 1915I was launched, and so this is a new service for families who may be on that registry of unmet need, also known as the wait list for innovations. And this is a different program as long as your family member qualifies for those services, such as the Innovations Waiver Service, they can get the 1915I services. These are if you think in terms of what innovations provides community living supports, community networking, respite, those services are available at a lesser rate than the innovations waiver, but it does provide access to those services for family. You can still be on the wait list. You don't have to choose between one or the other. So if a full innovations waiver comes up and that meets your need better than 1915I, you can make the switch for that. As you make the transition from elementary to middle school, you can start getting involved in vocational and pre-employment transition services through the program formerly known as vocational rehabilitation, and now it's known as employment and independence for people with disabilities, EIPD. And also because this is the audience around Exceptional Children Assistance Center and Early Children's, you may already be aware of the EPSDT, and that is the Early Periodic Screening, Diagnostic, and Treatment Medicaid Services for Children. Essentially, this is a federal Medicaid law that says Medicaid must provide all medically necessary health care services to Medicaid eligible children. It can be covered for children all the way up to age 21. And if those services are listed in this specific area of the Social Security Act 1905A, and if all EPSD criteria are met, then North Carolina Medicaid must cover that. We will provide a link in the handouts that we'll send after the presentation that will give you the DHHS link to the EPSD website if you're not already familiar with that. So your child doesn't have to be on a wait list receiving no services if they're Medicaid eligible. 1915I is available and EPSDT. Okay, I carried on from the previous slide around the EPSDT ensures that you're going to have all of these Medicaid services available all the way up to age 21. And your LME MCO across the state is really the hub to connect to formal services around behavior and developmental services. Carrie, can you touch on this last one here that's so important? And again, just with your early childhood experience, I
Yeah.
think you could preach this gospel very well.
Well, again, having that actual genetic diagnosis, I will tell you, it serves for us. Actually, it was a bit of a relief to have an answer, and it was our kind of calling card. Like there was no discussion. He has a genetic condition, so we were applicable. Having said that, we are literally my family are in that moment of trying to go through that process to get SSI for our son. But it comes in play for so many things, specifically services. I will tell you that for some families, we do not have a dual diagnosis of autism. With a good friend of mine whose son is a similar age as mine, she did get a diagnosis of a co-diagnosis of autism, and that opened up ABA services to her that we did not receive. So it just depends
Mhm.
who you go through and how the process works. But for us, the genetic diagnosis certainly is it's your kind of ticket in a lot of ways. So and it can't be disregarded or disputed because
Mhm.
it shows it right there. So.
I wanted to share a little bit about our stories, and Carrie's touched a little bit on hers, but there may be some additional pieces
Mhm.
around this. But in terms of how important it is for these early diagnoses, we actually found out that my son, Adam, before he was born, was going to be born with Fragile X syndrome. We found this out because, as we mentioned in our earlier slides, oftentimes Fragile X goes undiagnosed or misdiagnosed for a host of reasons because it's so rare. It's not often that you're going to find a pediatrician who's going to walk in and say, "Let's test for Fragile X," or see some of the facial features that sometimes come with Fragile X that a pediatrician would immediately know. We found out through my wife, who is the Fragile X carrier in our family, that she had uncles and cousins who had Fragile X. They were not diagnosed with Fragile X. She grew up with these cousins alongside her, and they had an intellectual disability, misdiagnosed. I can tell you, like the uncle that kind of brought Fragile X, the formal diagnosis into our family. Uh, Her grandmother uh, was told the reason that he has this intellectual disability is because, Mom, you had asthma while you were carrying him, and that lack of oxygen led to this intellectual disability. It wasn't until after her grandparents had passed and her aunt was then the guardian for her brother, their brother, her uncle, that a doctor walked in and said, "We can see some facial features that kind of point toward Fragile X." The family had this uncle diagnosed or tested, and sure enough, it was Fragile X. We were trying to have a baby at the time, and we were having some difficulty carrying a pregnancy to term. I should say, my wife, not me. But that was one of the things that we did find out later, that Fragile X carriers, women, often have some difficulty carrying a pregnancy to term. Little pieces that all kind of came into play. But once her uncle got that formal diagnosis, we then went and got tested. And sure enough, Teresa was a carrier. We found out soon afterwards that we were expecting our son, and we had a amniocentesis at UNC Chapel Hill. And about 6 weeks later, we got the diagnosis that he would be born with a full mutation for Fragile X. So immediately, there's a Fragile X clinic at Duke. Little did we know at the time when we relocated to North Carolina and chose Raleigh instead of Charlotte, how fortuitous that would be. But immediately, we met with a genetic counselor at Duke. We met a world-renowned researcher and physician at Duke who told us a little bit about what to expect those first 13 months. And we met a family peer counselor who was there, and she was amazing on helping us to understand how important it would be to have connections to other families. And so we've had a great services in North Carolina, having gotten the innovations waiver early on. It has made a world of difference in our ability to continue working and to allow Adam to have supports throughout school and now as a young adult who still lives with us. He is employed at a job that pays more than minimum wage, 20 hours a week. He just recently made the switch from SSI, which is a disability-based income from Social Security, to SSDI, meaning that he's getting paid through Social Security based on his earnings. Never expected that to happen, but we were very excited that he can continue to work and earn money through his job and continue to earn money through SSDI. So we're living a great life. Adam has the dual diagnosis of autism, and I certainly can see a big difference in our Fragile X boys who don't have autism because that diagnosis is pretty strong, creating lots of the autism behaviors in my son, creating opportunities for us to have escape plans when we go to big events, having to always plan around those different things that um, and how we navigate our world and our community so that Adam, as much as one can control our world and our environment, my wife and I do that so that we can uh, have opportunities to fully participate in the community, but also know when enough is enough so that Adam is not overstimulated and go into crisis mode.
Mhm.
But all in all, it's a great world and never knew Fragile X until we became parents with this. So that's a little bit of our story. Carrie,
Yeah.
any information you'd like to share?
Just a little bit, and quite frankly, the child I'm speaking of may pop in because his routine right now is to come in and give me a big sloppy raspberry right here. We'll see. He's actually, this is the first year he's had ESY, extended school year, so he's just coming back from that right now. Yeah, the early navigation, I certainly saw the benefits of early intervention and also getting connected with families, any families who were part of those supports. So I've been involved with the Special Education Inclusion Committee on the Wake PTA. I've been involved with, hey, honey. I've been involved in the Special Education Advisory Committee with Wake County Schools, and obviously the Fragile X world. I think the best phrase I got was, "It's the best club you'd never want to be a member of." So in other words, no one holds it against us, but we don't wish it upon you. But now that you're here, the international community is quite close. We connect virtually, and then every other year there's a big conference. So for me, that helped me feel a little more grounded. By being locally connected with other parents who are also advocates for their children with a variety of disabilities, but then also being connected with this greater community. But yeah, we've certainly navigated our way through North Carolina since he was a year and a half. And we're now at that next crossroads, which don't get me wrong, it's never easy. It's a lot of work, but we've got that shared community of people, which leads to what is on the bottom of that slide. We've connected through Steve and I through the North Carolina Fragile X Foundation, being involved in connecting with families. While it is a rare condition, there's still plenty of people around. It's we know people across the state who are affected and at all age levels as well. So. But keep an eye on the time. Maybe we could go through some resources. And I did put two in the chat. One, they're my favorites. One is a fact sheet. Oh, sorry, it's a fact sheet that Steve already presented, but I also put in one that I love because it's a good handout of just for any kid, a peer of my son's. Here's what that looks like. Here's why you're seeing him do these things. So it explains the behaviors, but also that our kids love their peers. They just find it really hard connecting.
Mhm.
So yeah, but I'll turn it back to you, Steve, for this slide.
Thank you, Carrie, yeah, these are wonderful resources, and there are just a few that we want to list for you. Obviously, we want to do a plug for Exceptional Children's Assistance Center early on because our son was diagnosed with a disability that was going to require an IEP and early intervention. We got to know about ECAC back when Connie Hawkins was the executive director, and I attended one of her training sessions and set my world on fire. So take advantage of these. Refer young families with young children to ECAC. There are two resources specific to Fragile X. We have our National Fragile X Foundation. Their website was just recently revamped. Lots of good resources, and
Yeah.
we have a North Carolina Fragile X website as well. Carrie and I are here today representing the North Carolina Fragile X Foundation. There are genetic clinics that are specifically for folks with Fragile X. Take a look at UNC, Duke. We love Duke. for all of the reasons here, not because of basketball, but just because of the family connection we have, as well as ECU. If you are looking to get plugged into formal services or to find out if your family would qualify for SSI if your child's below 18, LME MCOs, and your county DSS offices. We would encourage you to stay plugged in or refer families. Carrie
Mhm,
leads what's called a sip and chat session, like lunch and learn, like what we're doing today in the evenings. In fact, we have one tomorrow night.
mhm.
We have this is Fragile X Awareness Month. Uh, I think it's Tuesday, July 22nd is our actual Fragile X Awareness Day. But we do a fundraiser each year in July down in Clayton. We are working with the DD Council, the North Carolina Council on Developmental Disabilities. So if you know a person who's affected by Fragile X, the DD Council would like to know a little bit more about their story. If you visit their website, you'll see Adam's story. We host a bi-monthly newsletter with Fragile X, and we talk a lot about formal services and all of the budget things that are happening not only at the state level, but at the federal level, and additional resources that may be of interest to families. And we would encourage you to refer folks there. We'd love to hear from you. Visit us on social media. We have a Facebook page, and it's quite lively. And we're very encouraged to present our story to you today. And if you want to visit our website in North Carolina, it's ncfragilex.org. If you visit our national, it's just fragilex.org. And thank you for connecting with us and allowing us to share uh, our information about Fragile X syndrome.
Thank you so much, Steve and Carrie. I appreciate your time and for sharing your personal stories as well. We do have a couple minutes left if anyone has any questions. As Steve and Carrie had mentioned, we are going to send out this information afterwards, as we usually do. And this session will also be up on our YouTube channel. Before we do that, to see if there's any questions, I'm going to launch a quick poll.
Mhm.
The grants that we work on require that we report back to them that what we're doing is useful, relevant, and of high quality. So if all of our participants, our visitors here today, our guests would fill that out for us, that would be great. We love your feedback and appreciate you doing that real quickly. I will also mention that next Tool Time Tuesday, we will have with us Nancy Garado, who is with ECAC. She's our bilingual parent educator and deaf-blind family engagement coordinator. She'll be talking to us about empowering every child through assistive technology. So please join us next Tuesday to hear from Nancy. Thank you for everyone for doing our evaluation. We'll give that a couple more minutes. Again, if there's any questions for Steve or Carrie, feel free to put them in the chat.
Andrea, I know sometimes people are on here as professionals, not just as
Yes.
parents. So
Yep.
for any professionals, if you are someone or you know someone who's working with a family who have a child with Fragile X, the national website has done a fantastic job creating resources for professionals. They have little master classes. It's so helpful to be able to give that to someone who's working with our kids. It might be a therapist, it might be any number of professionals, but just know that that resource is there for professionals as much as it is for parents on fragilex.org.
Great. Thank you. All right. We have a little over 75% that did our evaluation. So thank you. We have some thank yous
Thanks, Shannon.
to you.
Thank you, Shannon.
Hi, Joanna.
And we're just about at 12:30. So thank you everyone for attending. Thank you so much, Steve and Carrie, for joining us and sharing your information. We really appreciate it. And I
Our
hope everyone
pleasure.
has a great rest of their Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
so
you,
much.
everyone.
Bye
Bye.
bye.